Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, picking up from last week, we saw how Balaram and Krishna went to Hastinapur to see how things are going with the Pandavas, because previously, when Krishna was in Mathura, he had requested Akruraji to do some service after Krishna had visited his home, and Akrura fed Krishna and washed Krishna's feet, and Akrura and his family took that charanamrita and sprinkled it on their heads. Krishna requested Akrura to go to Hastinapur and see how the Pandavas were doing. And we learned back then that Akrura tried to give good instruction to Dhritarashtra, but Dhritarashtra admitted that he could not change his evil ways because he was too attached to his 100 sons, headed by Duryodhana. And Dhritarashtra more or less knew that everything was going to end badly, and Dhritarashtra pretty much could understand that he was going to lose everything. But because of that attachment, he was unable to give it up, so he resigned himself to his fate. Then, while Krishna was in Hastinapur, Yudhishthira requested Krishna to stay for some time. And so, Krishna and Arjuna went on a hunting excursion. And while they were drinking water by the Yamuna river, a beautiful girl happened on the scene. Krishna knew everything about the girl because Krishna is Paramatma, Super Soul. But still, Krishna asked Arjuna to go find out everything about the girl. Arjuna, being Krishna's good friend, or best friend in this scenario, went to Kalindi, and she explained that who she was, how her father had constructed a cottage for her in the Yamuna river. And Kalindi told Arjuna, do not misunderstand, but I will only accept Krishna as my husband, because that is why I have been performing austerities and penances for a long time here. So Krishna accepted Kalindi, and also during this time, Arjuna helped the fire god Agni. Also Krishna helped, because Agni needed the Kandava forest in order to rejuvenate himself. So he burnt up the Kandava forest because there were many herbs and drugs, and so Agni became rejuvenated. But living in that forest, Kandava forest, there was a demon, Maya Danava. And so he was saved by Arjuna, and he did not die when Agni was devastating the Kandava forest. So now we will begin today's episode, first episode, entitled Krishna Forcibly Carries Away Mitravinda. The kings of Avantipur, now known as Ujjain, were named Vidya and Anuvindya. Both kings were under the control of Duryodhana, and they had one sister named Mitravinda, who was a very qualified, learned, and elegant girl, the daughter of one of Krishna's aunts. Mitravinda was to select her husband in an assembly of princes, but Mitravinda strongly desired to have Krishna as her husband instead. However, the feelings of enmity between the Kurus and the Pandavas were so strong that Mitravinda's brothers, out of friendship for Duryodhana, forbade the young maiden to accept Krishna as her husband. But during the Swayamvara, the assembly for selecting her husband, Krishna was present, and Krishna forcibly carried away Mitravinda in the presence of all other royal princes. Being unable to resist Krishna, the princes were left simply looking at each other. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the next episode is entitled Krishna Defeats 7 Bulls. And you can see by the background of my screen, that is the episode that is being displayed. So after this incident, Krishna married the daughter of the king of Koshala. The king of Koshala province was called Nagnajit. He was very pious and was a follower of the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Nagnajit's most beautiful daughter was named Satya. So, sometimes Satya was also called Nagnajiti, for she was the daughter of King Nagnajit. King Nagnajit wanted to give the hand of his daughter to any prince who could defeat 7 very strong, stalwart bulls maintained by King Nagnajit. The king's actual purpose in setting up the test was simply to obtain Sri Krishna as his son-in-law, since only Krishna would be able to subdue the 7 bulls. Without such a test, it would have been difficult for King Nagnajit to refuse the many apparently qualified princes and kings who had come to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. But no one amongst the princely order could defeat the 7 bulls. Therefore, no one could claim the hand of Satya. The 7 bulls were very strong, and they could hardly bear even the smell of any prince. Many princes approached this kingdom and tried to subdue the bulls, but instead of controlling the bulls, they themselves were defeated by the bulls. This news spread all over the country. So when Krishna heard that one could achieve the girl Satya only by defeating the 7 bulls, Krishna prepared himself to go to the kingdom of Koshala. With many soldiers, Krishna approached that part of the country known as Ayodhya, making a regular state visit. And when it was known to the king of Koshala that Krishna had come to ask the hand of his daughter, the king was very pleased. With great respect and pomp, King Nagnajit welcomed Krishna to his kingdom. When Krishna approached King Nagnajit, he offered Krishna a suitable sitting place and articles for a proper reception. Everything appeared very elegant. Krishna, in turn, also offered King Nagnajit respectful obeisances, considering him to be his future father-in-law. So, when Satya, the daughter of King Nagnajit, understood that Krishna himself had come to marry her, Satya was very much pleased that the very husband of the goddess of fortune, Madhava, had so kindly come there to accept her. For a long time, Satya had cherished the idea of marrying Krishna and was following the principles of austerity to obtain her desired husband. Satya then began to think, if I have performed any pious activities to the best of my ability, and if I have sincerely thought all along to have Krishna as my husband, then may Krishna be pleased to fulfill my long-cherished desire. Satya then began to offer prayers to Krishna, mentally thinking, I do not know how the Supreme Personality of Godhead will be pleased with me. For Krishna is the Master, and Krishna is the Lord of everyone. Why, even the goddess of fortune, Lakshmiji, whose place is next to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, residing on his chest as well as the mark of Sri Vatsa, and even Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, and so many other demigods from different planets, they also offer respectful obeisances unto Krishna. Krishna also sometimes descends upon this earth in different incarnations just to fulfill the desire of his devotees. Indeed, Krishna is so exalted and so great that I do not know how to satisfy him. Right here, I am inspired to say something about this last statement of Satya. She just said, Krishna is so exalted and great that I do not know how to satisfy him. So, in our Bhakti Vedanta philosophy, as given to us by Srila Prabhupada, we know actually how to satisfy Krishna. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasada, yasya prasada nagati kutopi. So, every day in ISKCON, the devotees begin their worship in the morning by chanting the Guru Ashtakam prayers. So this was the last verse. And what this verse is saying, that actually we do not know how to satisfy Krishna. So what Satya is saying is true. But we do know how to satisfy the spiritual master. That much we can know. And for those of you who follow strictly Srila Prabhupada's teachings, Prabhupada writes in his Chaitanya Charitamrita that the first order of the spiritual master is to chant the holy name of the Lord 16 rounds every day. So, simply by chanting the Mahamantra, because it is given by the spiritual master's instruction, automatically we know that we are satisfying Krishna. Later on, when we get to the end of the Dwaraka Leela, we will hear the story of Sudama, the poor Brahmana. And in that episode, we will hear from Krishna directly that Krishna himself said that when I see someone sincerely executing the orders of the spiritual master, I become very pleased with that person. So for those who are followers of Prabhupada and ISKCON, it is not a secret or a mystery how to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We simply have to execute the orders of Srila Prabhupada. Let us continue now. Satya was thinking that the Supreme Personality of Godhead could be pleased only out of his own causeless mercy upon the devotee. Otherwise, there was no means to please him. In the same way, Lord Chaitanya prayed in his Shiksha Ashtakam verses, Ai nandatunuja kinkarang patitang mang vishame bhavam budao kripaya tavapada pankaja stita duli sadrishang vichintaya. My Lord, I am your eternal servant. Somehow or other, I have fallen into this material existence. If you kindly pick me up and fix me as an atom of dust at your lotus feet, then that will be a great favor to your eternal servant. Krishna, Prabhupada says, can be pleased only by a humble attitude in the service spirit. The more we render service unto Krishna under the direction of the spiritual master, the more we make advancement on the path approaching Krishna. So Prabhupada just confirmed what I said just a few minutes ago. I'll repeat it. The more we render service unto Krishna under the direction of the spiritual master, the more we make advancement on the path approaching Krishna. We cannot demand any grace or mercy from Krishna because of our service rendered to him. So, we cannot demand. Krishna may accept or not accept our service, but the only means to satisfy Krishna is through the service attitude and nothing else. King Nagnajit was a pious king, and having Lord Krishna in his palace, King Nagnajit began to worship Krishna to the best of his knowledge and ability. King Nagnajit presented himself before Krishna in this way. My dear Lord, you are the proprietor of the whole cosmic manifestation, and you are the Adi or original Narayana, the resting place of all living creatures, Narayana. You are self-sufficient and pleased with your personal opulences. So how can I offer you anything? And how could I please you by such an offering? No, it is not possible, because I am an insignificant living being. Actually, I have no ability to render any service unto you. So yes, this is something that is sometimes asked, that if Krishna is so great, if Krishna already has everything, although Krishna is Atmaram, self-satisfied, Krishna is Aptakam, anything he desires, Srimati Radharani immediately supplies, then the question naturally comes, well, how can I, an insignificant living entity, satisfy Krishna? And the answer is that yes, even though Krishna is completely satisfied and pleased with the service of Radharani, still Krishna derives pleasure when the insignificant living entity surrenders and attempts to render service. That definitely pleases Krishna. So one should never get discouraged. You may think I am insignificant, and that's actually a good way to think. But that does not negate the fact that even though I am an infinitesimal, insignificant living being, by my service, by my bhakti, I am still able to please Krishna. That's why Krishna says in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Patrang pushpam palang toyam yome bhaktya prayachati. And that word bhakti appears more than once in this verse. That yes, even if you only offer Krishna a little flower, water, leaf, fruit, even though it's insignificant, because it is offered with love, that is what Krishna is enjoying. The only thing that attracts Krishna is your love, and it was already mentioned already, by your service attitude. That is your love. You demonstrate your love for Krishna by rendering service. So if you have a service, for instance, I'm going to now speak about somebody that I had lunch with on Saturday. So his wife, it's Madan's wife, Hema, she was explaining how she loves her service at the temple of making flower garlands. Now that's not a big profile service, but you can see the reciprocation. She enjoys doing that service. She fights for that service. And because there is reciprocation from Krishna, she becomes very satisfied by doing that service. In the same way, I do this preaching, I do these programs. I'm completely selfish because by doing this preaching, I get to realize reciprocation from Krishna. And it has been true for the past 50 years. I'll give another example. My good friend, our commander here, Shrilesh Maharaj. So, he does a service. He does his food for life. Because he is doing that service of food for life, he is experiencing an exchange, reciprocal exchange from Krishna. Am I right, Shrilesh? Otherwise, you would not continue. You would think, oh, this is a burden. Why have I taken on this burden of feeding these lowly, stupid people? No, that's not the attitude. His attitude is, let me benedict these people with Krishna Prasad. So Krishna reciprocates. Even some insignificant service, Krishna reciprocates. Please, never forget. And something I like to preach, that if you get a service, don't give it up. Treasure it. If you get a service, secure that service. Never give it up, because that is your real treasure in life, is your service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So let's continue. Prabhupada now comments on the prayer offered by King Nagnajit. Krishna is the super soul of all living creatures. So Krishna could understand the mind of Satya, the daughter of King Nagnajit. Krishna was also very much pleased with the respectful worship of the king in offering him a sitting place, eatables, a residence, and so on. Krishna was appreciative, therefore, that both the girl and her father were eager to have Krishna as their intimate relative. Krishna smiled, and in a great deep voice, Krishna spoke. "Oh, my dear King Nagnajit, you know very well that anyone in the princely order who is regular in his position will never ask anything from anyone, however exalted one may be, for such requests by I lost my place, hold on. Sorry. Such requests by a Kshatriya king have been deliberately forbidden by the learned scholars. If a Kshatriya breaks this regulation, his action is condemned by such learned Vedic followers. But in spite of this rigid regulative principle, I am asking you for the hand of your beautiful daughter just to establish our relationship in return for your great reception of me. You may also be pleased to be informed that in our family tradition, there is no scope for our offering anything in exchange for accepting your daughter. We cannot pay any price you may impose for delivering her. So in other words, Krishna wanted the hand of Satya from the king without having to fulfill the condition of defeating the 7 bulls. So after hearing the statement of Lord Krishna, King Nagnajit replied, "My dear Lord, you are the reservoir of all pleasure, the reservoir of all opulences, and the reservoir of all qualities. Indeed, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Ji, always lives on your chest. So, under these circumstances, who could be a better husband for my daughter than you? Both my daughter and I have always prayed for this opportunity. My dear Lord Krishna, you are the chief of the Yadu dynasty. You may kindly know that from the very beginning, I have made a vow to marry my daughter to a suitable candidate, one who can come out victorious in the specific test I have devised. I have imposed this test just to understand the prowess and position of my intended son-in-law. You, Lord Krishna, are the chief of all heroes. So I am sure that you will be able to bring these 7 bulls under control without any difficulty. For until now, these 7 bulls have never been subdued by any prince. Anyone who has attempted to bring the bulls under control has simply had his own limbs broken. So Krishna, if you will kindly bridle the 7 bulls and bring them under control, then undoubtedly you will be selected as the desired husband of my daughter Satya. After hearing this statement, Krishna could understand that the king did not want to break his vow. Thus, in order to fulfill King Nagnajit's desire, Krishna tightened his belt and prepared to fight with the bulls. This thing about Krishna tightening his belt, we have already seen several times when Krishna, as a young cowherder boy, had to fight so many demons in Vrindavan. So this is something that is very usual for Krishna, that when he is about to do some fighting, he tightens his belt. Krishna immediately divided himself into 7 different Krishnas, and each of them immediately caught hold of one of the bulls, bridled its nose, and brought it under control just as if it were a plaything. Krishna's dividing himself into 7 is very significant, for it was known to Satya, the daughter of King Nagnajit, that Krishna had already married other wives, but still Satya was attached to Krishna. So in order to encourage Satya, Krishna immediately expanded himself into 7. Lord Krishna expanded himself into 7 forms, not only to playfully defeat the 7 bulls, but also to show Princess Satya that she would not have to compete with Krishna's other queens, since Krishna could enjoy with all of them simultaneously. The purport is that Krishna is one, but Krishna has unlimited forms of expansions. Krishna married many thousands of wives, but this does not mean that while Krishna was with one wife, the others were bereft of Krishna's association. Krishna could associate with each and every wife by his expansions. When Krishna brought the bulls under his control by bridling their noses, their strength and pride were immediately smashed. Thus, the name and fame of the bulls that they had attained was thus vanquished. When Krishna had the bulls bridled, Krishna pulled them strongly, just as a child pulls a toy wooden bull. Upon seeing this advantage of Krishna, King Nagnajit became very much astonished, and immediately, with great pleasure, brought his daughter Satya before Krishna and handed Satya over to him. Krishna also immediately accepted Satya as his wife immediately, right away, and there was a marriage ceremony arranged with great pomp. The queens of King Nagnajit were also very much pleased because now their daughter Satya finally got Krishna as her husband. And since the king and queens were very much pleased on this auspicious occasion, there was a celebration all over the city in honor of the marriage. Everywhere there could be heard the sounds of the kanchal and kettle drum and various other vibrations of music and song. The learned brahmanas showered their blessings upon the newly married couple. In jubilation, all the inhabitants of the city dressed themselves with colorful garments and ornaments. King Nagnajit was so much pleased that he gave a dowry to his daughter and son-in-law as follows. First of all, King Nagnajit gave them 10,000 cows and 3,000 well-dressed young maidservants ornamented up to their necks. This system of dowry is still current in India, especially for Kshatriya princes. For when a Kshatriya prince is married, at least a dozen maidservants of similar age are given along with the bride. After giving the cows and maidservants, the king enriched the dowry by giving 9,000 elephants and 100 times more chariots than elephants. This means that King Nagnajit gave 900,000 chariots. King Nagnajit also gave 100 times more horses than chariots, or 90 million horses, and 100 times more manservants than horses. Royal princes maintained such manservants and maidservants with all provisions as if they were their very own children or family members. And after giving this dowry, the king of Kosala bade his daughter and great son-in-law be seated on a chariot and allowed them to go to their home, guarded by a division of well-equipped soldiers. As they traveled fast to their new home, King Nagnajit's heart was enlivened with affection for Satya and Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.